those. Also with a high deductible plan, a person can have a health savings account, which is a tax deferred benefit or a tax free benefit, you would say, where a person can remove part of their income pre-tax and put it in a savings account for health expenses. A person can have that with a high deductible plan, but not with a COVID plan. So with that primer, we'll look at high deductible plans first. You'll see that in the first column here in orange, TRS Active Care, this is what we would be giving up. And the TRS Active Care comes with what's called co-insurance. And for those of you that are familiar with health insurance, you know, co-insurance is what kicks in after the deductible's met. So even though a person would say, well, I paid my deductible, now insurance should cover everything. For plans, that have co-insurance, that's not the case. So our employees would continue to pay 30% under TRS Active Care high deductible, even after their annual deductible is met. We scroll over to the Texas School Health Benefits Plan, the Aetna network. You can see that it also has a co-insurance model, and just to put this in perspective, all the Aetna plans are modeled after the TRS plans we would be losing, so that we have some parity in that network and also comparable features. But the high deductible plan that we've carried for the last year and a half through the TSHBP has no co-insurance. And that's huge for a high deductible plan. So that means once the deductible is met, our member pays nothing else that year for their health care that's covered. You'll notice that the deductible is a little bit higher with the TSHBP as compared to the other two plans. But if you look at the overall out-of-pocket potential, if a person has like a normal childbirth or major surgery, the total out-of-pocket amount is less with the TSHBP that we've carried for the last year. Let's just lean over this that the prescription drug benefits are roughly the same. The only thing that I'll tell you about specifically is specialty pharmacies. For those of us folks who have specialty drugs, they would want to go under the Aetna TSHBP plan because that covers their specialty drugs. The TSHBP has limited coverage. More specifically, our folks who would be under the TSHBP, they still could have everything covered, but there's no guarantee. There have been about 3% of the folks who have specialty care drugs under the TSHBP who didn't have the entire thing covered. Not our own employees, but plan-wide. So we would have to inform our employees if they have specialty drugs, they would want to go with the Aetna plan or take their chance with the supplemental pharmacy program that they can sign up for to try to get everything covered.
Is that a monthly rate?
Yes, this is. It's a monthly rate. We go down to the bottom. This is after our contribution. The district pays $343 roughly for each employee per month to offset the cost of their health care plan for the employee only. $350 for employee and child or employee and spouse, and $375 for employee and family per month. So these rates that you are seeing are the rates that are after we put in our monthly amount.
So say that again, what's the monthly amount that we give per employee?
$343 per employee only.
$343. And what percent of the monthly, is that 60%? Is that 80%?
Let's say, for example, they go with the TSHBP that you see if there's a $28 a month premium that's left over.
Yeah.
So the raw premium would be $371.
371. So that's their single rate.
That's their single rate. So it's a really affordable option for our employees. One thing you all know from probably looking at the news is that health care keeps going up and up. I mean, this is a huge thing for all industries right now. They're dealing with this issue because
I've never heard it go down. It's kind of
like construction costs.
It's like concrete, right?
Lumber is going down.
Yeah.
Lumber is going down.
What percentage of our employees are employee only versus their whole family is under our health care?
I don't have the answer to that with me, Lisa.
Yeah.
I haven't been up.
I'll send it to you for an update because he has the breakdown.
Okay, I was just curious how many people insure the whole family.
So majority are employee and child.
Yes.
It's not employee and spouse. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like I don't carry car. It's crazy expensive.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you were finished, cause I just had a few questions for you.
And then if I may,
Yes,
unless it's
I wanna
something
let you
that-
finish.
Yes, yeah, and just to let y'all know that what Dana just said about these rates, if a person adds a spouse to any plan, it's an additional $700 a month.
Holy cow.
So if a spouse is working another job and can get their own healthcare plan, that's a huge savings for our employees. To have it covered. And that's a general plan wide that we look at. So next I'm going to copay plan, just a quick outline. These are the TRS plans, primary and primary plus, are what they currently offer our employees. The Aetna Signature plan, which is that large network, is right in between the primary and their premium primary plus. So it was dialed in with the deductible, with the premiums fall right in between the two. So our folks will realize the cost savings while still being able to have that network. This copay plan through the TFHBP is a premium plan for a couple of reasons. And we've had great success with this because it doesn't have co-insurance, once again. So through the other plans, a person can pay from 20 to 30% even after the annual deductible's met. For the copay plan, there's no co-insurance after the deductible's met. And also, prescriptions, the generic and network are covered 100%. So that is huge for our employees, so they don't have to pay that additional cost for general prescriptions. We would also, in the copay plan, have to inform our employees who have specialty prescriptions that they would want to go with the Aetna plan. And you'll see that the rates down here at the bottom, 70 for an individual for a premium copay plan. TSHBP is very reasonable. That's a great benefit. For the ones employee and children, it'd be $435 a month, and that's after our contribution. I like to think of this as too is people have, like you look at Josh Tully and the other folks, Graham Hall, we know so many people around here who use them. Having access to those positions also costs additional money. So that's where a person, if they wanted to make that choice to have that network here, you see the difference in the split in premium would be about $100 a month to have access to those particular things. And for some people that may be. So to summarize, the TSHBP offers more options than TRS and Active Care with significantly lower cost premiums. In some cases, $100 less a month. The part that makes this decision a little wonky is that TRS is always behind on their rate data. Every year that I've been here, and I hear from my counterparts that they've really been late in providing their rates, as late as May, when the board's making the decision about the insurance contribution. We're usually waiting on TRS to tell us if the rates are going up or not. So in this case, the rates won't be available until spring 2020. So the comparison rates that I just provided to you are based on a 10% rate increase, which is projected for the industry. If a lot of independent school districts bail out on TRS, the premium increases could exceed 10%, because the lower that risk pool gets, the higher the trend data, or the more pronounced it becomes, which means that their rates could even go up more. So these additional thoughts, these are my own, that cannot be attributed to
Hold on a second. The 10% increase on TRS, is that also a forecasted 10% increase on the other options? Or do we actually have those rates?
We actually have those rates.
Okay.
So the unknown is how high TRS will go.
And in the chart, didn't you build in a 10% for
Yes,
the
ma'am.
TRS? For the TRS?
We did, yes, so those comparisons you saw have a 10% forecast.
Since we have the TSHBP from last year and this year, what was the percentage increase, assuming it was decreased from last year to this next year?
For the individual plan, for example, we were dialed in at $5 a month and went up to $23 a month. For the rate increase, I believe it was about a 7% overall, which was, yes, and that was industry-wide
Right.
for all of them.
Yeah,
When you say 5 to 20 something, you're talking about after the district. I mean,
Right.
really, it's like a 380 to 360 or something, right?
That's right. Yes. So it was, you could feel confident with the 7% number. That's about the rate.
Frank, did my.
So we had just to be clear on the, TH whatever, I never can remember. That was a 2-year rate guarantee we've had, so the last 2 years have been a flat, no increase to the district.
Yeah. So some additional thoughts to leave you with, as you're weighing the decision of whether or not to accept our recommendation. We've seen a trend, like we see districts getting larger, and we see movement from rural areas to urban areas. And what this will do is lead to more self-funded plans, because the risk pool at larger districts is larger, obviously, which means that you can spread that across, which means it's less of a risk for a larger district to have their own self-funded insurance. Northeast, north side, they all do this. They realize great cost savings, so it really doesn't pay for them to go out and find a self-funded plan. So as this trend goes, it's going to pull more and more teachers away from the TRS plan. Also, smaller districts will have to form consortiums for risk pools.
Are they doing that yet?
Yes, that's what the TSHBP is, actually. We're with 153 other districts because we can't go it alone. So as part of the research we did early on at alternative health plans, this was the one, the TSHBP was the one that emerged as the most solid and also with the least amount of risk, because it was promoted in a way that a lot of districts jumped on board. So you'll see more and more of this, more districts pulling away from TRS because of the self-funded consortiums. The plans like TSHBP are the future of healthcare for small to mid-sized districts. You don't see many others being able to afford to keep fully funded plans like TRS Active Care. Look for the state also at some point maybe to jump in to bail out the retired teachers' healthcare, because one of the things that keeps the retired teachers' healthcare afloat are all the active districts paying into the same insurance program. So as this goes, you might see the state be compelled to have to help out with them. And eventually, this is just a lag. Teachers could be part of the state healthcare system. If we have a hard enough, difficult time as a state attracting teachers and providing healthcare, this could be a compelling issue for the legislature as they try to solve the issue of teacher shortages, especially in other districts. So the next steps for you, the board, resolution to discontinue the participation with Active Care will be put before you on the December 16th regular board meeting. If you adopt the resolution, we'll report it to TRS via email through the member district portal. Communication will go out to our faculty before the winter break. We'll let them know of your decision. And even before that, we'll send an email specifically targeted to the TRS Active Care 2 participants. There are 13 in your district who have no equivalent plan, and they'll have to adopt one of the ones that I described today. And then we'll roll out an information campaign during the spring semester. We just had a meeting about this with FBS, which is our benefits administrator, for all of our benefits, and we're working on a campaign. So if you all adopt the resolution, then we'll be ready to educate everyone on the options going into the spring semester. And that concludes my presentation. Do you all have any questions? Yes, Stacy.
This is a real fundamental question that I just never know. Is TRS actually funded by the state in any way? Or is it just simply, it's just a risk pool like everything else? I mean, is the legislature putting money into this for the teachers' benefit?
I'm going to defer to Mike on this because I'm not aware of any state funding. I'm pretty sure that.
The state will say yes, they are, but basically they're not.
I shouldn't have known the answer.
The districts are to contribute at least $150, and the state contributes $75. But that $75 is supposed to flow to the districts through the state, which it doesn't for us. So technically, no, the state doesn't put anything in, but they say they will.
So we're not leaving state money on the table in any form or fashion.
So I got to, you focused on the first couple of slides about a national network. How important is that to our employees? Are you seeing that feedback in survey or the responses to the surveys?
No, I haven't seen any survey data. I think that it's kind of like the driver settings in your car. you know, like they're a feature that they're nice to have in the event that, you know, convenience, I should say, but we haven't seen that being a crucial decision in the side.
Okay. And then to the TRS Active Care 2, those 13 participants, how different or how difficult will it be for them to find a plan on the new THSBP?
In talking with our benefits administrator, it is actually a matter of perception and communication and not loss of benefits.
Okay.
Because people, like, the Active Care 2 plan, people are locked into the provider that they've had for so long. So that's going to be a concern as to whether or not some of them will be able to keep their provider under the Aetna network. But on the other hand, they will actually stand to have more coverage and fewer out-of-pocket costs by going with one of the other plans that we offer.
Is that typically like older employees?
It
Or
is.
just gonna grandfather them around from an old, okay.
Exclusively, yes, they are.
Clay?
Well, I'll say that, what you're going through with that, I had to go through last week, is that it's, brokers kind of throw everything at you. But my questions are, and what I came from my meetings is that, at the end of the day, you know, I'm giving $343 per employee period, right? And so my question is for our single young teachers, or our over 65 teachers, we came up with options that, A, they opt out. And I wanna know if they have this option, because first of all, Medicare and the Medicare supplement is better than any insurance we could ever give our employees. Because, and don't ask me why, but people that have run off of our insurance, we have United, that go to Medicare are like, if the government does anything right, it's Medicare.
Yeah.
And so my question is if, like in our young singles, you know, go on the internet and get just high deductible in case they get hit by a car, however they, you know, just use internet doctors, whatever. Can we get them to $343? And why I say that is because at the end of the day, the people that opt out want to choose something else, but that person still costs us $343 period, right? That's what we're gonna pay. So my question is, if they opt out, do we increase their paycheck $343?
I'd like to just offer initial thought, and Mike may have a follow-up thought on the budget. So, the more employees that we have under our plan, the better off we are. Even though it seems like 343, you know, we can save that money, it's true. But then you'd be pumping it back out to the employee anyway. And chances are that employee would have a tougher time finding the same amount of coverage off the market that they would have through one of our plans for $28 a month. You know, even with the offset. So, you know, it's our incentive to keep as many people on the plan as possible, but also it's that young person's incentive to try to find the lowest cost. So even if, you know, and Mike talks about if there's a way to pay, you know, I'm not aware.
Well, I would say the young person paying $28, okay, fine. You know, I get that, but the Medicare, we can't offer any employee better health insurance than Medicare.
And I'd like to speak to the Medicare as well, and also about market plans in general, very briefly. So if a person chooses Medicare, they still have to go Part B.
Right.
Which is about for an individual, is about $140 a month for a Part B supplemental.
Correct.
Plan. And then they may also have to get an additional prescription benefit. Our plans that we have for individuals are actually coming in at a lower cost with a greater coverage. Like for example, a person goes with the TSHBP copay plan, that's $70 a month after our contribution, which would save them $70 a month and probably offer equal if not better benefits, particularly in the prescription benefit area. Market plans, we have an employee who chose not to enroll their spouse in our plan, $700 a month, you understand that. This particular employee, wife's pregnant. They found out afterwards that the plan they selected off the market doesn't cover OB/GYN obstetrics. So now they're looking at having to potentially pay that completely out of pocket. there's so much fine print out there, if the person doesn't have an advocate like we have here in the district to counsel people on their insurance entitlements and make sure that they're covered, we may be putting our employees in a perilous situation.
Right. Well, I mean, my thought is that, you know, usually the bottom line is 50 employees, you know? And if we're combining ourselves with 138 other districts, I mean, that's a lot of people. You know, I mean, so if we lose 20, this shouldn't change the number, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I get that.
And so, you know, I'm just curious, and I'm not saying you have to do it, I just think that if we as a district are gonna pay each employee $343, then, in my opinion, that's that employee's money, and they can go, you know, do with it as they please.
You know, I would be, interested too,
Yeah.
I'd just like to say, I would be for that, I'm covered by military TRICARE.
See, there you go.
Which would be in my pocket, but I don't know of many employers that would offer that, just because it's very costly. Because any gains that you might have, you know, by putting in pocket would be losses overall in the district. But Mike, did you want?
It would be an extra $750,000 to $1 million hit on the budget to do that for all employees.
Well, and can I mean, if I can add just
To do
put,
what?
as an
To
employee.
pay $343, if you pay all employees $343 per month.
No, I'm not saying that, I'm saying, well, you gotta pay the insurance company $343 a month.
For those that elect to take it.
If we have 200 employees.
But we don't have, out of all our employees, only around 450 take the plan. We have 650 employees.
Oh, so you're saying, so what I'm hearing is that people that opt out, we keep the money.
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and I was gonna say, as a just employment policy, taking care of your employees is sometimes, that you have a global policy that you get this plan or you don't get this plan, but we're not gonna reward by paying you money for not having health insurance. I mean,
No, I think
don't-
they're getting it somewhere else.
And Clay, I don't have health insurance, and so I basically give myself a raise every month by not having it, and I'm not saying that's great. But from an employer's perspective, you do wanna care for your employees by making sure, like Frank's saying, that they have a good coverage, and they can opt in or opt out, but they're not gonna, I would not want to incentivize our employees to not have it by giving money instead. Even, you know, because ultimately we want them healthy, we want them checking up on their health, we want them in the classroom. And if they get into a financial bind and feel like they need to start taking that money instead, I don't want to reward them for that, because I want them to be healthy, you know, so that's,
So you're saying you don't have health insurance?
I do not have insurance. But we'll talk about that
Okay,
offline.
I just wanted to throw, I think, probably this is where Ryan's going, but it's not technically a point of order, but, the discussion of what we give for benefits, whether it's for health insurance or whatever, that happens in August, and so if this needs to come back, we take that in consideration the whole, which is what raises do we have, and that kind of thing. So we could certainly talk about it again at that time. This presentation is really just about our decision to go forward with insurance.
Is there any, increase our budget for this year anyway?
Yeah.
We gave them a little bit of an increase on it? Okay. That's it. Okay, so it doesn't sound like there's any red flags necessarily for having this presentation to y'all. If there are additional questions, you might give Frank a heads up about, send them through me, but we'll go through this again on Thursday, okay?
Thank
All right,
you.
thanks.
Thank you.
Yes.
You man.
I did not hear any, questions from you all.
He's gonna come help me with my
Consent agenda, so I do wanna, I'm moving forward on that and letting you know that we do have a level 3 grievance hearing, in executive session following the meeting next Thursday night. So you will get all that information at the very end of our morning, just morning from Frank. So we can move into policy, and we're gonna actually go ahead and pull policy.
Yeah,
from
we're
this
gonna pull
meeting.
policy for this meeting just to keep moving.
I'm gonna let you know, we did get some positive feedback on, FNG updates, and I'll send that to you all in, the weekly update, so you can review that, but we'll
So I think we so did we pass consent agenda?
yes.
Yes.
I think there was a question about EIE.
I've answered it. with
Okay.
Lisa.
Do you want the whole team to hear that, or is that just like?
Yeah, Frank thought it might be, I mean, it's brief, I mean, I think
Sure.
that it was a little confusing in there about, retention, I mean, is it retention the right word? Whether or not a child is held back, and they changed the wording on that to say that it's up to the parents. And
The
that's because of,
legislature
yeah, the
That's the
legislature
result.
changed it, so I was just confused because it said they eliminated it, and can understand why, but basically, my understanding is, it's up to the parent's decision because of COVID.
That's correct.
Does that make sense?
So I can add one clarification to that. There was part of that what was in effect last year that was grades 4 and above.
Yeah.
That 4 and above part goes away.
So it's any grade.
That 4 and away goes away on September of next
Oh,
year.
okay.
And so then it's only K to 3, where a parent
Oh.
can say, I want my child retained. Now, we will still continue with our meetings, make sure they have all the information, like we have always done.
Right.
And to be honest with you, Lisa, at the end of the day, if a parent has been like, I feel really strongly, we've honored their wishes.
Okay.
And it works both ways, though, right? If the parent wants the child retained, also if the parent wants the child advanced, and that differs from the school's recommendation.
If, you mean we want the child retained?
Correct.
Correct, we have the same process
Either way.
that we go through. Good question.
Thank you.
So we can move into,
Alright.
assessment and recommendations.
So we are moving into, the assessment and long-range planning committee meeting. Supposed to start at 7:20, so we're getting a little bit of a late start. We're gonna start with the bullying overview. We're not gonna go through the health insurance update again, and then we'll start our architect reviews. So, Frank, you're gonna do the bullying overview?
So we've had multiple questions about what the process is for identifying and labeling bullying. There's a law around this, and I thought it would be helpful for us all to hear from Frank what that looks like when a report is filed on campus.
Is this what you emailed to us?
They email it to us.
No.
They,
I've done it multiple times.
I've gotten it from
Oh,
multiple people.
Linda sent us a
You
a
did?
weekly
Okay.
update to attach to the document.
I just thought this did it again.
It did.
Alright, so, I will now begin my overview, and I will set my timer to get a sense of how long it is.
Or how short you took.
Or how short. Alright, so I first want to start with the statutory, which is always kind of the sense with laws, right? Originally, Senate Bill 179, in the 85th legislature, which is known as David's Law, passed a variety of things regarding harassment, bullying, and cyberbullying. Now, we had laws about bullying prior to that. This simply expanded definitions as well as authority, rights, and responsibilities. Now, Texas State Safety Center has been designated to be kind of the main support for both parents and schools, and so that this is where this is from. And there's a whole lot of stuff about a lot of things, not just bullying. You know, they do like school safety and shootings and that kind of stuff. They train, they do a lot of training for that. At any rate, now Senate Bill 179 is not the only legislation. It's just kind of the first big one, and then there's every session there's something to amend or add to bullying generally. Now, I want to let you guys know this is not impacting us just yet. We're having to figure it out, but from one of the recent special sessions, I forget to lose track of them all. Senate Bill 2050 added some more things to bullying, and I highlighted a few. You don't have to read it all, but essentially, the law tasks TEA, the Texas Education Agency, to create standards to do the following things. It's a long list of things. I highlighted one in particular, which was to establish district committees to address bullying by focusing on prevention efforts and health and safety and wellness initiatives. Now, in my experience, when a law says some other agency will establish standards, those standards are usually include all the specifics, like who needs to be on the committee, how often do I need to meet, what's the content of their conversations. And so, based on my experience, I was waiting to start the committees once we got the guidance from TEA about what the standards are. So you'll notice in the TASB update, well, the committee folks won't see it, because in the fine print it said, hey, FFI has some things, but we're not gonna change FFI, that's our local policy on bullying, until after TEA does their standards. And so I was waiting on this update that we just got
for more specific guidance about what these committees should do or not, and TASB doesn't offer that guidance. And I heard that, TA won't have their standards done till next year anyway. And so I'm tasked with having to start this committee knowing that the rules about what the committee does and doesn't do in its composition might have to change. I'm just giving you all a heads up because the general world knows about committees, and David's Legacy Foundation has been pointing people saying, hey, ask to be on your campus's committee. Well, we haven't had those established yet because I've been waiting on more guidance. But given that we're not gonna get it this year, at least have to get the wheels turning. So that's something I'll start working on with principals. We actually started talking about it yesterday.
I'm sorry, Frank, did you say that, was there an effective date or a date of kind of?
It's September 1.
Okay.
But it's what, so, yeah, and so what's frustrating to me as a practitioner is that they pass laws saying it's effective September 1, but there's this one dangling thing that says, based on what TEA says the standards are, and TEA has not finished their standards by September 1.
So it was effective September.
Right, that's right. And so that's why I feel like in good faith, I have to at least start doing something, knowing that I might have to change it a little bit as TEA pulls out their
Right.
standards.
And then that's just the date that the law goes into effect, but it wasn't like they had some kind of date for
Correct.
specific, okay, gotcha.
And then along with this, likewise with, we're supposed to start collecting information and submitting that to the state, but we won't know what that looks like until TDA is done with their standards, which probably will next fall sometime. Just wanted to give you all a heads up. Now, let's go back to status quo. And so based on the statutes that are passed, like Senate Bill 179, the point I want to make with this slide is to say, even if we didn't have Senate Bill 179, the actions involved in bullying would still be against the code of conduct. Like, there's still things kids shouldn't do. There's still things that kids would get disciplinary actions for. What Senate Bill 179 and subsequent legislation does, it essentially does three kind of big things. It establishes particular authority for schools to do things explicitly. And so a real example is cyberbullying, right? Prior to David's Law and subsequent legislation, that was a gray area because it was something that happened outside the school. And it, whatever, right? That was hard. So they kind of added more authority for schools to do stuff like that. So that was, they were trying to help schools by giving them more authority in various realms. The second thing that laws like that do is they establish certain responsibilities for the schools, such as supports for kids involved. Like, you're required to offer training, counseling support for kids who are both victims and perpetrators. Well, most schools would have done that anyway, but the law says you have to. Likewise, you're required to do an investigation and write up a report. That's not required by law. Most schools would do that, but it's something that's a responsibility established. And the last thing, in terms of buckets or categories that legislation like this does, is it provides particular rights to parents and victims of bullying. So, for example, if you go read FFI local, it says, if an action was determined to meet the criteria of bullying and your student's a victim, you have a right to say, I want my kid, the victim, to be moved out of that classroom where the other kid is. So that's just one small
There's
thing.
misconception on that, right? Because there's many people that feel like the bully needs to be parents.
Right, that's not what the law says you get. The law does not establish that right. Now,
And that's interesting.
Now, so those authorities, responsibilities, and rights are all encoded in FFI local and in FFI legal, and they're also referenced in our student code of conduct. That's one of the reasons why it's so important to use the TASB model code of conduct, because they intentionally construct the code of conduct to make sure it aligns with those laws. And so I always feel comfortable and going to the code of conduct knowing that it's in alignment with whatever the current laws are. And we get that TASB update in July or August, as we get the updated version. Now, even if, there's a criteria, and we'll go over the checklist in a minute, but even if an action does not meet the official statutory definition of bullying, it's still probably against the code of conduct. Like, you can't just go around doing stuff to kids. And so there's a variety of things. And so in our code of conduct, on page 5, it lists, hey, kids, you're supposed to do all this stuff. Demonstrate courtesy even when others do not. So like technically, if there was an action that someone's called bullying, but it doesn't meet that criteria, we go like, yeah, you shouldn't have done that. There's a disciplinary consequence, we talk to your parents, we have counseling, there's all this kind of stuff. And so one of the things that I try to work with APs on is to say, anytime you have an accusation of bullying, even if it doesn't meet the criteria, you still need to take it seriously and you still need to have the appropriate consequence. And there's just a second page of the list of them. Now let's go to the statutory definition. The Texas State Safety Center has put this together, and it's been actually pretty helpful. What they do is they say, look, this is how you apply the statutory criteria for bullying. And so I will give you a second to just kind of thumb through it, right? The first page defines, I'm not going to pull it up unless you guys want me to. Gives you kind of an overview of how to proceed. A previous statute when it talks about safe school teams or whatever that's called. In our parlance, that's our threat assessment teams. So you recall a couple years ago we started threat assessment teams. We actually started that before the state required us to do that. So that's what that is. And then you just kind of, it's a series of if-then questions. And so you answer all the questions, and if you follow the flowchart all the way down the road, then it officially meets bullying. And what that means is that it triggers those authorities, rights, and responsibilities. If it doesn't meet the criteria of bullying, it simply doesn't trigger those things, but it sure needs to be handled administratively. Amy.
Well, I think right now, the term bullying is overused quite often, and I think this is very helpful. I mean, it is, I hear, I'm like, that's not bullying, it's not bullying. But this is helpful.
Okay. So if you guys are okay, I'd like to go to the next thing, which kind of actually pivots off of what Carrie just said. We really agreed for years that the term bullying, it's an imprecise term. Mistreatment is a vague term, but it's also like there's a lot of forms of mistreatment that aren't bullying, but they're still inappropriate.
Correct.
And so we need to deal with them, right?
Right.
And so we've had this for several years. We've tweaked it over time. On our website, under the Students and Parents tab, there's a link that says Policies and Reporting Bullying and Mistreatment. And then I don't expect you to read that graphic on the right. I'll talk about that in the next slides. But it essentially talks about, and we made this after our Heart of Heights task force. It talks about not all, like all mistreatment is inappropriate. Maybe it's bullying, maybe it's not, but we all take it seriously. And here's what you should do as a parent or as a kid. And so it's just kind of walks through steps. It's steps that we're trying to clarify for folks, but it's also kind of our commitments to them about what we're going to do. And incidentally, in the bottom left, we've long had, since 2009, an anonymous way to report safety concerns. And that's on our website. It's on the home page under shortcuts, but it's also under the Parents and Students tab. Now, I'm just going to do an overview. So essentially, what we want to encourage folks is within 24 hours, report something. And I know sometimes you go back and forth, so like within 72. But the main point is that if you don't report something to an administrator or a teacher, so they can get an administrator involved, it's harder to work with. Just the longer time at the tail is, it's harder. So we want to encourage folks to do that. The second thing is, if it does go to a teacher, we need that teacher to get as much facts as possible, so before we cut the administrators loose. And so that's kind of a direction for our staff to help us out with that. The third thing is, once it gets to the administrator, we will guarantee, I'm saying, hey, it's our responsibility to call the parents within 3 business days to inform them of the investigation. Now, that's actually in statute, the 3 days. Our step prior to the law passing said within 24 hours,
Yeah.
but I've made it 3 days because that's what the law says. No longer than, right? Now, the fourth thing is, so once the administrator investigates the incident, once they conclude all the stuff that they have, they notify coaches or sponsors, because locally we have a 24-hour code of leadership. And if this is a bullying incident, it could trip that. Now, it could also just be a regular disciplinary incident and doesn't trip that. which is this is the stop back to say, hey, let's have that conversation. 5. Once we have the information we notify all the parents, both the alleged perpetrator as well as the alleged victim, and we talk about what counseling is available. Now, of course, that's not really required, right? If the parent's like, yeah, I don't want my kid to do that, that's a parent's right to do, but we try to persuade them that on both sides it's important, right? You want to help kids learn from situations. Now, the 6th one is not statutory, but it is our local thing. We ask the administrators to put a thing on their calendar in 1 month, because our experience is that sometimes things fester and people, for whatever reason, maybe they're frustrated, they think that's going to have done or whatever, and they don't report stuff. So we want to make sure we're being proactive to follow up. Number 7, we do ask folks that if it recurs, this is going to go to number 6, but yeah, please let us know. Let us know immediately. Often we'll have, sometimes we'll have somebody say, yeah, I reported in September, you guys handled it. It kept happening, I got tired of it, I didn't report it. But then when your fuse built, you reported in January, and you said, well, this has been happening since September. But the administrators hadn't had a chance to deal with it because it never got reported. And so that's what we try to work with folks. And I understand various reasons why people don't do that, but it's really important to help us deal with it at the time. And so the 8th is this commitment, and this came out of the task force as well, was that we need to see things as patterns, not just as isolated incidents. So let's say something happens in September, gets reported, it happens in October, it happens in November. Well, maybe they're a month apart, but it's still a pattern. And so we want to commit to saying we want to see the broad picture of things when it happens. And then number 9, we want to encourage parents that if they're ever dissatisfied, to call the principal. Don't post it on Facebook. Don't talk to people at Little League. Tell us about it so we can try to work through it. Even if you are still frustrated, it's at least helpful to have a conversation. And so this is what we list out.
Frank?
Yeah.
Real quick before you leave.
Yeah.
On number 2, about the staff confirming and getting as much information and investigating, do we do regular training of our staff to tell them this is what we expect you to do when you get a bullying concern?
We do.
Okay.
So every August, I have a long list, and they're supposed to be for start of the year. Actually, it's in June. I get it reminded in August, and it's on the list.
Yeah.
The other thing I might add is that it's also a state law that every employee has to get trained in bullying prevention, and so that's an online training that we have through our safe schools. Everybody does that as well, but that's more kind of big picture.
Right.
It does underline the importance of reporting it. Now, I want to just drill down on number 4, which is investigate. So this is internally. The law requires us to have a written report. What we do is we have a form in FormSpace, which is an online thing we use, and it asks a series of questions. They're all the questions that you would think are important to determine whether something is actually bullying or not. They're not necessarily all the questions you would ask to determine appropriate disciplinary placement, if that makes sense. The purpose of this report is to be in compliance with the law that says when you have an accusation of bullying, you need to look into it to see if it meets the criteria or not. So every time there's an accusation, they fill this out. Periodically, the press will ask me, hey, how many accusations have you had, and how many actually met the definition, how many did not? And so, we collect this. I just run a report, and I can count it up.
Press? What percent would you
Yeah, the
say
media
agree?
sometimes they when there's sweeps weeks, they want to do bullying stories.
Last time you were asked that, what percent was sweet?
I don't remember. I can certainly dig that up and give it to you in the statement.
Is Sweeps Week still a thing?
It sure feels like it is. At any rate, and so this is the form. It's longer than 1 page, so I have a Google Doc that's a worksheet for the APs. So they just answer all the questions in the Google Doc and they cut and paste it into the form. You know how forms are sometimes. Now, the other thing that it's a new thing we're trying. This is another internal thing. It's not required by law, but just in our continuous improvement process, we started using a form called the student feedback form. And it's designed to ask kids, hey, once we're wrapping up, or it's delicate as to when you want to bring it up to a kid, right? But you'll say, how did we do? And we ask them a series of questions. I do have time. Here's a sense, here's the questions, and we actually developed this with some student input. So we had a plan of action, did we follow it? Were your parents notified? Was communication with you as a student sufficient? Did we involve other people that needed to know? Was the support sufficient? Do you feel like the relationship with you and the other student was addressed adequately? Were the consequences addressed sufficient? And then just any general feedback on how we can improve this process. Now, I will say sometimes parents don't want their kids to give this because they feel like it's going to be used in a negative way. I'm sorry that that's out there. This is still relatively new. Hopefully, as we get rolling, people will be more cooperative, because our point was we want to know how we're doing. If we're not doing well, we want a chance to improve it. This actually grew out of a conversation I had with Maureen Molat. I touch base with her about once a year, and we just kind of talk about what's going on, because a lot of people go to the David's Legacy Foundation, and she kind of gives me a big picture of here's what I'm hearing, here's some things to consider, that kind of thing. So it's, now the other, go ahead.
Well, I'm gonna have you wrap up.
Okay, sorry. The other thing is that we have this parent notification of services, and so this is another thing. This is for the parent end. It's not necessarily feedback on how we handle it. This is what we want to say is, hey, we have counseling services for you. Do you understand that? And then we ask them to sign and give it back to us. I will say some folks are just mad, and they likewise are distrustful of this, and so we haven't got a lot of these back. But this is our effort to say, well, we've gone over everything. And this is, again, in a debrief with Maureen. This is such an intense experience for parents, and we get that, right? With your kids being mistreated, it doesn't feel good. But sometimes you're so emotionally intense, you don't hear all the things that are being said. And so we just will figure out, like, how do we get over that hump to help people process through that. And that's what we're trying to achieve. Anyway, that's it.
You all appreciated Frank's presentation about instructional materials. Do you want this in the update? Like, do you want these slides? Pretty good. Sounds like we're good.
I just have a wondering for Frank, and I think Jimmy to take on, because I think it's kind of like a C&I question, but we do so much on the process and all that, and I think that's great, but we also have to acknowledge we can't proactively identify and stop every threat that exists in the entire world. We just can't. So sometimes all you can do is build up your defense. And so I wonder, like, what we can do for kids to build resiliency. Because we talk a lot about, how to handle it after it happens, but if we can build kids up internally, then when it does happen, they can handle it a little bit better. It doesn't hurt their self-esteem as much or cause the same damage. So I don't know what programs are out there. I mean, I love what Texas State does, but I'd love something that's more proactive in terms of building kids up with resiliency, so that we can stop it before it happens.
Thanks, David.
Yeah.
That was nice.
Thank you. It was well said.
Congratulations.
He's making the point that I didn't tell you.
I know. Notice that gracefully.
You cut him off anyway.
I did. Everybody has to get a little this morning. We are ready.
We are now going to move on to the architect interviews. But before we do that, we're going to get a brief overview of the what's happening thus far.
And then y'all, you're gonna take a break as the architects come in, so you can just sit tight for.
Are they all coming in today?
No, that's just one.
Just one.
Thanks, Jess.
Because I had another meeting that we're meeting with. Is that right?
There's 3 different.
Wait, you give me a second, I'm gonna put the.
It's like one today, another day.
Ryan.
Yeah, this one.
Michael?
Somebody here to make sure.
Okay, so if you,
This is
just look at the slide, it outlines the timeline and the process that will follow, to get to our decision. Hopefully, the formal recommendation will come from my administrative team to you all at the January board meeting. So that's.
Sit right here, darling.
If you look at the top, we started the process with our building committee, and that's Ryan and Stacy and Clay met. I guess that was last two days. We met to identify the top 3 candidates to come to you all for interviews. So we have 3 interviews, 1 scheduled today and 2 scheduled next Wednesday morning. And so they have been notified that they've got 20 minutes to do a presentation to us, and then we have about 20 minutes for Q&A following that. I have our forms that we will use to ask them all 5 common questions each, and then, you can ask any other question that you have as a result of those. But we'll get the 5 questions answered for each candidate. You'll also provide our admin team with some input about what you feel are the areas of strengths and areas of limitations after you hear their presentation and after you go through the Q&A process. The administrative team that's going to be part of the follow-up work includes Mike and myself and Frank, but it also is going to include Corey Smith and Ron Ritterman. He's going to be here this morning too, primarily because the next phase of work is high school. Yeah. Right? Rebuild. And it's also junior school, new gyms, field, and track. And so we're going to have both of them be part of the process throughout. I will tell you, both Corey and Ron have come in after the fact, on this project, and have great experience working with the architects in play right now. And so they'll bring a lot to the conversation and the decision that will be made. We will.
We have one quick question before.
Can I get all the way through it?
Yeah.
And then so our admin team will take their input from today. We will go through the reference calls. We will come to you with top 3 ranking, because part of the process is we can't formally talk about and negotiate fees with them prior to rank ordering. Is there anything you want to say about that? Okay. And so again, we hope to get that to you at the building committee on January 12th. Actually, Mike is wanting us to push that forward a little bit, so we might tweak that date to give us a little bit more time with fee negotiation. But then the formal recommendation would be at the January meeting. Do you want to add anything to that? And then I'll.
No, it's just if we don't have a contract in place by the board meeting in January, we may have a special call meeting sometime after that.
Oh, that's what we decided. I'm sorry, that's a correction. We're not going to have a meeting prior to. The next meeting will be that January 12th. After the interviews. That's right. That's what we ended up yesterday. Question?
I just want to make sure that of the,
Just one person.
how many submissions? Of some sort, thank you for sending your stuff, and you weren't
Yeah,
second.
we already did it.
We've already done that.
We already did it.
We've sent I've sent something out to everybody that we picked to review who they were. But I haven't done anything further than that.
Well, and maybe that's okay, I just want,
A notification.
a notification of something.
Okay, I have a question about process.
Yes, so can we bring in the middle school team over there as well? I've just heard some ideas they have to think about in terms of how they're not done the gyms and
So here's what happens through your process was, after we identify that architect that we're going to work with,
Yes.
they're going to come up with a comprehensive process
Okay.
to get stakeholder engagement.
Okay.
And that's a question on here that we're going to have them answer today. So absolutely, the junior school staff, the athletic
Okay.
department is all going to be
So
part of
they'll
the team around them. Yeah,
Okay.
not necessarily the decision, the administrative
Yeah.
decision about the firm we're going with.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I thought it was well.
Okay, any other questions before we just break?
So, were there any things that were like, basically the committee, the working group kind of worked through, so I don't necessarily, the first thing I want to go to is claims, and look at all the claims and see what happened. But I want to know whether y'all in committee really drilled down on that and kind of, they're here because we're not worried about the claims. That's all.
Yeah, well, no, but also understand that, if I'm building this building next door and the architect made a mistake or the plumber made, let's say the plumber made a mistake.
Yeah.
Okay, well, when you get into litigation,
Everybody's
everybody's
on
thrown
the-
in.
yeah. Okay.
Right, so when we nail down the actual claim,
Felt comfortable
we
about it.
realized that, well, they just got named on the lawsuit.
Okay.
Well, I was gonna add, I don't think it needs, don't worry about it, I think it needs to, out of our 11, we've narrowed it to 3.
This is what we felt most
And,
comfortable.
and none of the 3 are 100% perfect, because it was not perfect, so drill down and challenge all of those things, but we definitely wrestled with all of the things you're talking about.
Cool, thank you.
I will tell you 2 of the top 3 that we identified have claims.
Mm-hmm.
So, all of them? 2
Two
of
of
the
the
top
top
3.
Yeah, we found that we tried to, whoever had the most legal action against us, that's who we
That'll be a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
We like a good fight, so.
We're getting good at the legal battles, so that's funny.
Yes.
I just swallowed that, I just swallowed it, okay. Thank you, that's right, okay, so it is, 8:15, you wanna take a 5-minute kind of restroom stretch break, let them get situated, you and I are gonna go to the end of the table here, let them be here to present, okay,
Okay.
so we're gonna reshuffle all of our stuff, we'll get them situated here and get started. Great plan. Do you wanna identify who's gonna ask number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or where you wanna start?
Should I not have the one that says Dana on it?
Yeah, I would like mine, cause mine has notes, if you don't mind.
No, I will.
Okay.
Why did you speak up?
I'll ask number 5. That's part of my personality.
Well, I wanna know why there's cartoon characters in here.
It's a graphic.
Where is the next one for you?
I'll be happy to ask number 5.
Okay, did you take this?
You called it. I'll ask all 5.
Okay. Susie, did you take yours with you?
I did,
You
yeah.
didn't bring it? Okay.
I think it's in my car. I think I can do it.
He needs it.
Yeah.
I am well, thank you.
Brian, why don't you ask one of us, just kind of roll through it and say, hey, you know, like one or two questions, because no one's raising their hand.
I will. I'll ask.
Terry gets number 5.
I'll start.
You wanna start, you get 1, Clay gets 2, you get 3, and Brian gets 4.
Please share mine.
What if I don't ask questions?
Then make it up. You have to ask.
No, I heard said that to him. Hello.
Well, I'm just curious if they know what a profile learner is.
And I
Well,
answered
we're gonna
your
find out.
questions and said basic.
Okay, then I'll ask you questions.
I don't know.
Summer. There are days I might say, hey, who's gonna take my? He's very young. He's 15 and 16.
Sit up here, in the table, and Brian here can help you out. Get your-
Can't live without him.
We also brought some coffee for y'all to
Yeah,
put over in
I'll go
the.
get.
Thanks, Mike.
Usually there's like boards everywhere.
Yeah, I will.
No, where you? Usually close one of them. Yeah. What do you think about putting a chair on either side? Because, Dane and Ryan, there's an extra chair, I think, right there, you can sit right there.
Where's Mike?
Oh, yeah, that's good. I think you can do that. Why don't you, this is FTC.
That's what he's trying.
David's just manspreading.
They're up here.
I would recommend.
I'm sitting up here in the back.
Okay, yeah, so this is extra.
Congratulations on your amazing run.
Thank you.
I said it right.
What you said here in the back. Yeah.
You didn't hear me. I said, I kind of missed them. Just kidding. I know.
Very.
I know, I'm just kidding.
It's my baby.
Everybody's got a phone?
Bring the speaker. I can't imagine.
Getting settled technology-wise. Perfect, perfect. Y'all need water or anything? Good?
No, we're good. Thank you.
Thanks for being patient this morning. We always have an ambitious agenda and we're kind of rolling through it, so.
How it works everywhere.
Not yet, but yes. It's always growing. And just make sure you
Hey.
No, I missed the memo.
I love it. I love it.
We're just
Let's see you,
listening.
Wasteland. I love it. I love it.
I both woke
Stop.
up this morning and I was like, I had mine out, I was like, you're
All right, are you all about ready? Okay. You go ahead and get started. 2 minutes.
Frank Alfaro, Assistant Superintendent.
Ryan Hamilton, trustee.
Ryan Anderson, trustee.
Ron Rittman, athletic director.
I'm Michigan Superintendent.
Corey Smith, principal at high school.
Clay Page, trustee.
Lisa Kramer.
We have Mike in the back, and
I'm Brian Green, Director of Technology.
Well, thank y'all for having us. We're with Fluger Architects. We will do a little bit of an intro of ourselves, as we go through the presentation, but again, just wanted to say thank you for giving us the opportunity to come here and talk about ourselves. My name is Robin Popa. I'm the managing principal for the San Antonio office. You will see 4 faces up here, but only 3 of us up in front of you. Frank Amaro is, who would propose to be the assistant project manager on the project. He's dealing with an upper respiratory infection. He is a long-seated, deeply ingrained Alamo Heights resident, so believe me, it pains him more than you can believe that he's not here. In fact, we had talked about like just calling him on his cell phone and just putting it in the room. But I'll let these lovely ladies introduce themselves too. I am Heather Bossie. I am the marketing director at Fluger, and I am a graduate of Alamo Heights in a class of 2007.
I am Lindsay Milligan. I'm also an Alamo Heights graduate from 2001. I did every school, Howard, Woodridge, the middle school.
Proud to be back. And at the bottom, what you see is if you're familiar with the Strengths Finders, you know, our leadership has all taken the test there, and these are our top 5 strengths. And so I think when you start really analyzing what that means, you'll see that what we were pleasantly surprised at is that we have a really good blend of all the 4 major categories in our leadership positions. So I think we think that that makes us really well-rounded and able to serve our clients best. But we're just 3, 4 of us, but we're also part of a larger group. This is everybody in our San Antonio office and our corporate support. So even though it's just the 3 of us up here in front of you today, it really is the whole team that would be providing service to Alamo Heights, should we be selected. We are coming up on our 50-year anniversary, so next year is going to be a big year for Fluger Architects. We have 73 employees, over 5 offices. 37 of those are registered in their field, whether that's architecture or interior design. And of those, we have 11 LEED accredited professionals. And just a really quick profile of us, in the last 8 years, 5 new high schools, 6 new middle schools, 16 new elementary schools. But what you can see is that the majority of what we do is additions and renovations, because just like what I'm sure y'all are experiencing is sometimes when you're in an inner city school district, you don't have a bunch of greenfield sites available. You have to get real creative with the campuses that you're using. And so what we did is we took a statement, educate and empower every student, and inspire learning for life. And we think that that really is a great bar to set and an expectation for every single student that passes through your doors. Because that aligns a lot with what the industry is out there looking for. So a recent survey of CEOs' top 4 characteristics that they're wanting to see from the incoming professionals
collaboration, communication, creativity, and flexibility. And I think y'all's mission statement aligns with that, which is really great to see. And it's bolstered by the fact that your profile of a learner says the exact same thing. In fact, some of those words are directly related. Think critically and creatively, communicate and collaborate. You couldn't be more aligned. So we know that this is more than a building. It's not just a building for you.
Yes. So, like I said, I went to Alamo Heights. I feel like it definitely shaped the person I am today. And it kind of feels a little cheesy saying it, but that building across the street is really kind of the heart of Alamo Heights. It's so much more than just a school. You know, it really is your traditions, it's your dreams, it's where you're going in life, it's, you know, where your parents go to school, where your grandkids are going to go to school. It's kind of the symbol, but it's so much more than just a school. So we found this on the report, and I thought it was just so cute. I love, being a lady mule, and I remember there was always construction going on every year of school. We've been watching the stadium going on. There's always something happening at Alamo Heights, and it is, you know, are you built out? No, of course not. There's always something more to do. So we were kind of brainstorming, like, what could it possibly be? Like, what else does Alamo Heights need? So the first things that came to mind, there's always, you know, maintenance, operations. There's always something that needs to be repaired. There's always some kind of mechanical system or something that needs to be improved. Parking has always been an issue. I was laughing with them. The first scale model I ever did was in my 10th grade history class, where we had a project to solve the parking at the high school. And it was literally like studying for your architecture exams, where you figured out how much space a 45-degree angle parking takes versus, you know, a head-on parking spot. The tennis courts went down while I was in school to make more parking, but it just always seems to be an issue. So we know that's something. But I think just thinking bigger picture, you know, Alamo Heights, I feel like sets the standard, not just for San Antonio, but for the state. And sometimes it's easier to become the best than stay the best. So it's kind of like, how do you set the bar even higher than what it already is? And that's something, you know, that we are looking forward to possibly exploring with you guys to keep Alamo Heights, you know, the best. So there's a couple of different projects that we've worked on that we want to talk about. The first one is Northeast School, High School. It's kind of similar to Alamo Heights in the sense that the original campus is about 10 years older than the high school, but it's completely landlocked. You know, there's neighborhoods, there's businesses on all sides. There's no property that you can acquire to build on. So you either have to build up, you have to do major renovations, or think very creatively like how you're going to infill your existing site. The other thing that I think is kind of similar to Alamo Heights is there's a very strong community ties to Lee. We had to be very conscientious of moves we made, especially regarding some of the more historic buildings on campus. So one of the unique things, Robin and I worked on this campus for over 10 years. It was multiple bonds to overhaul the entire campus. So from the very beginning, from phase one, we had to be looking at, you know, the 10-year plan. What are the goals of this campus? So you can see yellows, additions, blues, renovations, usually major renovations, and then the pink is demolition. But every phase, we were slowly moving around the campus because this is an active campus. There were no places for a portable city. You have to move kids around. And then the thing about Lee is it's not just Lee High School. It's also MESA, which is their art magnet school, and also ISA, their international school business. So you had 3 different administrators, 3 different student bodies that we needed to the entire thing.
And I would say after a decade of working on this campus, cherry on top, so.
So when you're on an active campus, student safety really is the most important thing. And part of each phase is figuring out where's the construction site, how are students going to get to their class, how are staff going to get to their class. So this is actually from the second phase. This is the plan. And what was really unique about this second phase is in that this middle portion, we infilled between two buildings in an old paper, and that building tied into the surrounding buildings in 5 places. So we the class is going on. How do we not disturb minorities? How do we not disturb testing? It was difficult.
Well, and what I would say is the key thing in all of this is communication. We couldn't have done this at all without buy-in from the district and from the campus. Those 3 administrators that Lindsay was talking about, it was incredibly important for us to have continual dialogue with them, being honest about what it takes, because construction is messy, it's a headache, it's disruptive. Ironically, it's the kids who seem least disturbed by construction. It's all of us old, buddies that are like, well, this is how I normally walk to my car. But really maintaining that open line of communication and making sure that people could see the end goal and the vision and understand it's going to be difficult for a period of time, but you've got to kind of work through that and make it as best as you can.
So some of that might have been moving your athletic facilities up, whether it be a gym, whether it be tennis courts. This, I think, is a really nice image because it's showing that the new building that I was talking about that we infilled between 2 existing, and then that older campus where these windows that were once exterior are now interior. It was just a really, I would say, a very rewarding project to see it from the very beginning all the way
To the end.
over a decade of work.
In fact, it feels weird now that our fine arts project is wrapping up because it's like we've spent so much time here.
And now they're a degree.
Several, probably. So, leading up to the projects, we have to go through a process, right? We have to go through a design process with the district, with the stakeholders, and so we want to just touch a little bit on what that looks like for us. So what we realize is that the key to any successful project is the team. And so who makes up that team? It's not just us and our engineers, it's you, it's your community, it's your stakeholders, it's your students, it's your teachers, staff, parents. There's a whole litany of people that are part of that design process, and maintaining open and honest and transparent engagement with those people is the key to success on that. So really what our challenge is to meet and have those discussions with a whole variety of people who have interest in the development of this district and whichever project it ends up being. And really taking their individual goals and their individual visions for that and aligning it to a common direction. And from that, we develop those guiding principles for that project. And it can be something as very typical as like, I want a lot of natural light. I want to be able to see a lot outdoors. It can be also something that's a little bit more arbitrary, so building or a project help foster that. There's lots of different ways that we can do that, and it's really about having those discussions on what you envision that space ending up to be. This is kind of a typical process of development of a project. You probably experienced it. You will hear it, I'm sure, in your next interviews. But what we like to think about as you go through the process of programming, schematic design, design development, contract documents, bidding, contract administration, and warranty. Those are terms that are defined by the AIA, which is the organization that kind of oversees our industry. What we like to think about is that instead of defining it as a phase, what are we actually doing in that phase? What is the root of our effort in that phase? And so for programming, it's collecting data and aligning that data with your needs. So so it's a lot of meetings, it's a lot of talking, it's a lot of walking, we're not wearing leopard heels coming out to your side. You know, we're boots on the ground in that way. Schematic design, we're conceptualizing, we're really brainstorming, we're thinking outside the box. That's when tennis courts on the roof came up, you know. So we're really kind of thinking about multiple different ways to solve the, not the problems, the opportunities. Design development, we're honing in on a couple of key options and ideally narrowing it down to one, and then really kind of developing it and making sure that we're anticipating all the potential hiccups and challenges with that. Contract documents, that's when we really refine that design. That's when the engineering team really gets in. We start doing all the details. That's when the drawings get produced, the specifications. And then obviously in bidding negotiation and contract administration is when you see all the work happening. It's the construction. It's a lot of us being on site representing your interests as the owner,